Welcome to Middle Age Can Be Your Best Age, the show designed to help make middle age your prime time of life by defying the notion that once you reach 40, 50, or even 60 years old, your crowning achievements are all behind you. Regardless of whether you're just approaching 40 or are firmly entrenched in your middle years, it's time to launch your very own personal journey toward a joyful and purpose-filled second half of life. Each week, host Roy Richards, an expert on midlife renewal and author of A Midlife Challenge, Wake Up, will discuss the challenges common to middle age and help guide you to a brighter tomorrow. Now, here's Roy.
Well, hello and welcome to this week's edition of Middle Age Can Be Your Best Age. And I think we all agree that stress is highly abundant in our lives today, both in the U.S. and around the world. Because of the coronavirus, our normal way of living is disrupted. We're either presently laid off or fear we soon may be. Our kids and teenagers are out of school, and most of their normal sports and activities are canceled. Our 401k and investment portfolios, which looked so strong just over a month ago, have shed a third of their value and appear headed down further. And then, of course, there's the fear of the coronavirus itself. Were you yourself or a loved one contacted, and does it threaten serious illness, even death? And finally, and this is perhaps our greatest fear, how long will this pandemic go on, and how bad will it get? And as bad as it is, COVID-19 isn't the only thing that stresses us out. A survey from the distant past, just last year, before coronavirus surfaced, a survey revealed that 2 out of every 3 Americans said they were extremely or somewhat anxious, and today's guest, Stephen Hall, M.D., an integral medicine practitioner, is here to tell us why and what society and our medical community is doing to mitigate the adverse health effects and why that isn't working. And more importantly, he will offer tools for getting off the vicious stress cycle, not just through coronavirus pandemic, but over the rest of our lives. And before I introduce him, here are Dr. Hunt's qualifications. Stephen Hall, M.D., has been practicing family medicine in Greater Seattle, Washington since 1985. He practices a dynamic form of medicine that combines traditional and alternative modalities, encouraging patients to find wholeness in their lives on all levels: physical, emotional, social, and spiritual. And Dr. Hall is author of the 2018 book, The 7 Tools of Healing, Unlock Your Inner Wisdom, and Live the Life Your Soul Desires. And he also conducts online classes, including a 12-week course, Taking the Bear, Taking the Bite Out of Stress. And hello, Dr. Hall. We're indeed honored to have you with us here today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, Roy. I'm happy to be here.
Well, let's start at the beginning. What are some of the ways that stress can make us sick? Can you give us a few of the negative impacts chronic stress can have on our bodies and our minds?
Yeah, so the best way to think about it is like an economy. So your body only has so much energy to use each day. And so stress would be like a wartime economy.
Oh.
And when we're at war, where do we spend our money? You know, we spend it on bullets and bombs and that kind of thing. And then we're at peace, where do we spend our money? We spend it on roads and schools and hospitals and, infrastructure stuff.
Yeah.
So if you're at war too long, then your bridges start falling down, your water mains start breaking, schools start crumbling. So your body's the same way. So if you stay in the stress response too long, then you're not digesting your food properly, you're not building your bones, you're not fighting infections and more importantly, fighting tumors that are emerging in your body. So a lot of things get put on hold because your body didn't think that stuff was important if you were in the middle of running from a tiger. But that's only supposed to last a short time. And so we have this stress response for short-term, like, physical threats.
Yeah, it's a good idea to be stressed if you see a bear, a grizzly bear coming down the path toward you.
Yeah, I mean, you need it for that,
but
right?
you don't need it when you're safely ensconced in the lodge and the bear is nowhere to be seen, but the stress remains, then you've got a problem because it's, like you say, the eating away your health, doing other things.
And our bodies actually can't tell because you need that stress response in an instant, right? Like split second. And so your body's kind of set on worst case scenario first and then ask questions later. So it can't tell the difference between the perceived threat and an actual threat. And so the perceived threat of a deadline at work, the perceived threat of being laid off and you know, not being able to pay your rent, those kinds of things, your body reacts the same way as if a car just swerved into your lane and coming at you. So that's why stress can make you sick, and it affects just about every system in your body, and so that's why it can be associated with so many different diseases. And but I want to set some definitions first. So there's stressors, which are like any experience you have that puts a load or strain on your body. Yeah. And stresses are inevitable, right? I mean,
we're all going to have those from time to time.
Yeah, exactly. But stress is what happens when your ability to carry all your stressors gets exceeded, and that's when things start to break down in your system. So
you inform us that what our society is doing to mitigate the adverse health effects of stress aren't working. What's wrong with the current approach that needs to be changed?
Well, most of the things that we do to manage our stress are after the fact.
Yeah,
so, for example, if you go and relax after a stressful day, I mean, that's better than nothing, but that doesn't protect you from the 10 hours of stress you just had.
And that's often easier said than done as well.
Yeah.
It's still
and
out there.
So we need to do something to stay out of that stress response in the first place. Because once you perceive a threat, your body responds within milliseconds.
Yeah.
So it's way too fast to stop and do your breathing exercises or whatever, you know. So we need to do the work ahead of time so that most of the things we have to face day to day don't trigger that fight or flight response, because they don't really need. I mean, if you started running, because the fight or flight response gets you ready to run or fight, right?
Yeah.
And if you run or fought at work, that probably wouldn't be a good idea.
You'll probably get fired.
Yeah. And so it's not adapted for our lives, and so we need to be able to head it off at the pass. And so that's what I advocate, is doing the work ahead of time. And so what that means is, a stressor, especially the stressors outside your skin. Now, I'm not talking about living with chronic pain or, those are stressors inside your skin. And we use functional medicine to deal with those.
Yeah. But the
stressors outside your skin, like COVID or a traffic jam or relationship problem or your manager at work, those are only stressors because of the way that you look at them.
Yeah.
And so it turns out you can choose how you look at things if you do the right practice. And so that's what the 7 tools are, basically, is a way to do that right practice to change your perceptions so that what seemed like a real pain in the rear end now looks like an interesting opportunity to learn something new.
Wow. That's a
For
real
example.
Conversion. If you're able to, instead of considering it as something you have to deal with in a crisis situation, look at it as a chance for learning or doing something new and improving your overall life. That would be a tremendous change.
But you've got to change those beliefs ahead of time so that the feeling, because your feelings are just the result of whatever comes into your mind through your senses and your thoughts, passing through your belief structure, what we call your worldview. And then the feeling is what comes out of that. So if you want to change the feeling, you've either got to change the sensory input, which, you didn't choose the COVID virus. You didn't choose, the stress at work or whatever.
Yeah.
But what you do have a say over with the right practice is what you believe.
Why is it that this coronavirus is creating so much stress, not just in the U.S. and worldwide? I remember in 2009 we had swine flu and H1N1 or H1N1, whatever they called it, but I don't recall things being canceled. Obviously, sports wasn't stopped, and we didn't seem to have
it didn't spread like this has been spreading.
Yeah, it is, but it is somewhat like flu, and most people recover fairly quickly from it. But I guess because of it is a threat to a lot more people than the swine flu was.
Yeah, and it tends to cause a viral pneumonia.
Yeah.
And especially in people with diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and that's almost a third of our country now has type 2 diabetes, and people with high blood pressure, people who are older, and so what they're concerned about is having more people get sick than we have the ability to take care of.
Yeah.
And like in Italy, they're having to choose who to treat and who to send home to die.
Yeah,
they don't have enough.
That's really scary.
Yeah, and so the goal is to just slow the spread down enough that we can handle the sick people. And it's going to, the more people who get the virus and get better, the less the virus is going to be able to spread.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So eventually we're going to get on the other side of this, but it's going to take a lot of people getting the virus and getting better. But we want to slow it down enough that we have the intensive care facilities to take care of the people who need them. Because it'd be horrible if we had to send people who say, well, we can't put anybody over 70 on a ventilator. They just have to go home and die. We just don't have enough ventilators. So we're going to use them for the 40-year-olds and not the 70-year-olds,
Yeah, no, I can see that. But despite all the wonderful innovations in conventional medicine, what is the major flaw in the way medical students are trained and how they treat their patients? I was fascinated by that in your book when you point that out.
Well, it's been a long time since I've been in medical school, so I don't know what they're doing nowadays.
When you were there, then.
Well, but I've seen a big change. So my specialty was family practice, and when I was taught, we were taught you should be able to deal with 90% of the issues that come in the door. And nowadays it seems like family practitioners are just triage. You come in and they say, well, go to this specialist for that and go to that specialist for that. And they don't actually take care of anything much themselves anymore. And I think that's a huge loss. And that's why, 6-month waiting list to get into any of the specialists, because a lot of people that could be taken care of by primary care are getting sent there. And I think a lot of that is because of the malpractice threat, and that's a whole other issue. But
I like how you point out that just strictly conventional medicine treats the symptoms, but not really the underlying causes, and that's what your practice, what you're getting at in your book and in your practice, is to broaden that, to really look inside and see what's causing the problem.
Yeah, and especially, a chronic disease, and over 50% of Americans now have a chronic disease, and half of those have more than one chronic disease at a time. So that chronic disease is actually the real pandemic, that we've been living with. And conventional medicine doesn't have a good answer. I mean, this has all been happening on conventional medicine's watch.
Yeah.
And so a chronic disease, by definition, resists our attempts to treat it.
Yeah.
And otherwise, you treat it and go away, right?
Yeah.
So a chronic disease is asking us to dig deeper and cast a wider net, because healing is still possible. Okay, that's a belief I really hold strongly, that healing is always possible for a person.
Yeah, that's a great place to start internally if you're ill, to believe that healing is really possible. I like somewhere in your book it says that if you really are convinced that you love your body and you convince your body that you love it, and you love your life, that the body will cooperate with you to make things better.
Yeah, because all of you likes to be treated the way you like to be treated.
Yeah.
And so, do you like to be ordered around?
No.
You probably don't, right?
No, probably.
So your body doesn't like to be ordered around either. Do you like to be like ignored and not listened to? You don't, right?
No, I don't. I often am.
Yeah, we often are, exactly. But we don't like it. And our body doesn't like it either. So basically the challenge is, well, how can I treat my body the way I would like to be treated?
Yeah. That seems like a logical thing to do, doesn't it?
It does. It's not rocket science, right?
Yeah.
But we don't do it. We order our bodies around, especially in athletics. You get trained to just tell your body what to do and expect it, and you get mad at it when it breaks down. And so one of the first things I do with my patients when they come in is try to get them to stop the war they're having with themselves. And because healing's not about war. And because nobody actually wins a war. There's always casualties on both sides. And you don't want that with your body or with your mind or with your mental health. So you're all on the same team, all the different parts of you. And the answer to stress, the bottom line is, we all have inside of us this place of deep inner peace. And so the answer to stress is learning how to connect with that part of ourselves when we need to.
Oh, I see. Well, let's talk about the 7 tools of healing, the title of your book. We don't need to go into great detail, but can you just run through? These are simple, time-honored methods to deal with things. Let's go run through the 7 healing tools that we have to use.
Yeah, so these are, you're right, there's nothing new in the tools. What's new is how they work together as a unit. And so the first tool is like a foundation that everything's based upon, and that's faith. And the way I use faith and the way that People's Inner Wisdom uses faith is it's actually how strongly you believe what you believe.
Yeah.
And that can get stronger with practice. So it's not a particular set of beliefs like we think of in our society, but it's actually how strongly you believe what you believe. And then the second tool is awareness, so that we actually have information to work with. So we want to become aware of what's really going on in our life.
That's so aware of what's really allowing us to see what is in the current moment and not try to hide from what's going on. I think awareness is very big.
Yeah, so because what you're becoming aware of is your own truth in this moment.
Yeah,
so that's all that exists.
And that goes together with the next one, acceptance. There's no use denying what's going on and pretending to dilute yourself into what's really going on. You have to accept and be aware of what's going on before you're going to change it, right?
Yeah, and all I think about is that acceptance is just like putting your starting coordinates into your GPS.
Yeah.
Because if you put in your goals, which is, your end result, but you put in the starting coordinates of some place you wished you were instead of where you actually are, the directions might not get you. Right.
No, it won't get you there.
And then the fourth tool is actually what works the change. Because what happens when you try to force an aspect of yourself to change? Like if you want to try to not be angry, if you want to try to not
be unhappy.
Or not eat, or not be depressed. So trying to make yourself change doesn't actually work. But change is possible. What causes the change is the fourth tool, which is compassion.
Yeah, and that's on yourself as well as on other people.
Exactly, because compassion is supposed to be for all of reality, and you're part of reality too. So I have this image of imagine you got everybody stand up for this big panoramic photograph.
Yeah.
And where you are, there's a little hole cut out. No.
Yeah.
So So you want to have compassion for the whole panoramic picture, which includes you.
Yeah.
So that's a really important piece. And I've had perfectly highly educated, intelligent people that have never thought of having compassion for themselves. It just never entered their head.
And there's also the next step, forgiveness. There's so many people that are bitter over something that happened years ago, and you don't have to forget about it, but sitting there and fretting over what somebody did or blaming someone accomplishes absolutely nothing, really, in terms of
Right, exactly. And forgiveness is not condoning what somebody did. It's not forgetting what they did. It's actually for you. It's like stopping and taking boulders out of your backpack, you know. So you don't have to keep carrying this stuff with you everywhere you go. And so forgiveness is a true letting go. It's finishing unfinished business.
Yeah.
And you can't force forgiveness. And what we've witnessed with this approach is that the forgiveness just naturally happens when enough compassion's been brought to that particular experience.
Yeah, that's a good point. What about gratitude, the sixth step?
Yeah, so what happens, you know, there's that idea that every experience has a gift hidden in it for us. Even the really bad ones, there's usually a gift in it for us. And when people really receive that gift, then they tend to feel this sense of gratitude. It's like, oh, wow, that's the way this world works is really amazing, you know. And it's like standing in awe of how the universe works.
Yeah.
That's when people come in and say, you know, I wouldn't want to go through that again, but I'm glad I did because of all I learned from it or whatever, then I know they've gotten their healing. So I use gratitude like a yardstick to tell when somebody's gotten their healing.
Now, what's the seventh tool, right action? I'm not sure just what that means. What do you mean by right action?
Well, it's like what action would bring forth the highest good.
Oh, I see.
That's right.
Pretty much what all of us should be doing all the time.
we try, yeah.
Most people the most good.
But there's an interesting issue. There's an interesting problem. It's like, how do you know that your actions are going to bring you the results that you want?
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't, like when you invest in the stock market, you don't know what's going to happen. When you go talk to somebody, you don't know how they're going to take what you say.
Well, I guarantee you one thing: if you don't try anything, the result will not be that positive.
Exactly. But there's an old saying that right action is based on right understanding. And my hypothesis is that if you practice the first 6 tools faithfully, you'll arrive at right understanding, and then you'll just know what to say to that child in that moment. You'll just know when it's time to go ask for a promotion. You'll just know what to eat, you know, what your body needs right then. So right action is based on right understanding, and it often just follows that, you know, when you connect with your own deep knowing and live from there.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it. Here's one final question. How do you suggest our listeners can apply your 7 tools to reduce stress, function optimally, and get through this traumatic coronavirus epidemic, or pandemic, I should say? How do you advise your patients to cope?
Well, the first thing is to learn the 7 tools and to practice them until they just become default settings, till they're automatic. And so I have a website. It's called www.the7tools.com, and it's the number 7. And it explains the tools there. There's a lot of free content. Obviously, I encourage you to read the book and practice the exercises in the book. And but just keep practicing this way of being with yourself. That's all the 7 tools are. Just a way of being with yourself so that your natural healing just rises to the surface.
I also found on your website a fascinating class that you offer called Taming the Bear, Taking the Bite Out of Stress. I know the last class began on January 23rd, 2020. When's your next class going to start? I guess it's too late for that one, but
well, we're almost done with that one. But we're actually working to put the class totally online so people can just start it when they want to.
Oh, that's
and not have to start as a cohort and take it all together as a group.
Yeah.
So we're working to do that, but to still have the advantage of a phone call and a live forum to get questions answered and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then that'll also bring the price of the class way down too when we do that. So.
Oh, that's great. So they should just go to your website to keep up on when you're going to offer that online then.
Yes, because if they sign up for some of the free offers that we have, then they'll get emails when we have new classes. Like we're working on a class right now, how to teach your children to be healthy with their feelings.
Oh, that's a very valuable class.
Yeah, because that'll then give you all the information you need as you go through your life. If you can be healthy with your feelings, then you can find out who you really are in your heart of hearts. So that's the goal.
So go to his website, the7tools.com, or you also have another website, StephenMHallMD.com, that has a lot of the same information on there you can also go to.
Right, and one of the things I've done in response to this COVID is I've started doing telemedicine.
Oh, great.
Which means that I could consult with people anywhere in the country. So I can, if you have a question, if you, like especially a wellness question, or if you like how an integrative medicine I'm having, or that problem I'm having, we can do a consultation over Zoom or over the phone.
Yeah, that'd be even better than going to Dr. Google.
Yeah. I don't know quite as much as Dr. Google, but it has been vetted a little better probably.
Yeah. Well, anyway, to conclude, not just through the coronavirus, but throughout the rest of our lifetimes, you and I have a choice. We can spend the rest of our lives battling stress and perhaps the bad health that it brings along with it, or we can affect lasting, authentic change. And I'm certain, like me, you'll answer yes, but two obvious questions arise. How do I make the necessary changes, and how do I make them last? And to answer those questions, I highly recommend you tune into Dr. Stephen Hall's website and preview and purchase his book, The 7 Tools of Healing, Unlock Your Inner Wisdom and Live the Life Your Soul Desires. Heck, what better than doing that? And Dr. Hall's advice will help you not only to improve the conditions you currently face, but the ones leading to stress and illness, but it will also guide you to taking steps to change what brought problems or issues into your life in the first place. And though it probably doesn't feel like it, this current coronavirus slowdown may be the ideal time to look inside and integrate all aspects of your life, physical, emotional, social, and spiritual, to become the healthy, purposeful, and vibrant person you were created to be. And thanks a million, Dr. Hall, for your inspiration and best of success going forward.
Well, thank you. You said that so well. I really appreciate that.
Well, those were most interesting suggestions from Dr. Stephen Hall. Yes, you and I can take a bite out of stress, even in difficult times like these, the worldwide coronavirus pandemic. And before I go, I'd like to touch on a subject affecting so many of us these days, those of us with office jobs, fortunate enough to still be receiving a paycheck, but working from home. And the issue, how to remain productive but also physically and mentally healthy when you move from an office to a spare room at home, or maybe even your dining room table. The March 30th, 2020 edition of the Wall Street Journal included an excellent article by Alexandra Samuel, who reports she has worked from home for 22 years. And heck, I can relate because I've worked from home since 1989, and that's over 30 years. And I'm going to summarize the high points of her article now, at least half of it, along with a few thoughts of my own. And here are some of her excellent suggestions. One, let go of the 8-hour day. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? You no longer are on a formal time clock, and your boss is not aware of when you show up and when you leave work, so don't attempt to force yourself to work on one. Furthermore, think about it. How much of your so-called work day at the office is made up of meetings in which you're mostly listening, water cooler chat, collegial conversations, and random interruptions? On a good day, heck, you may get perhaps 4 or 5 hours of decent work time, and since hopefully your work at home is uninterrupted, more on that later, you can probably get more done in 5 hours at home than in 8 hours at the office. Conversely, if you try to work 6 or 7 hours in a stretch, you'll probably get drowsy, burned out, or both. So don't get hung up. If you started late and didn't force yourself to work until 5 p.m., your workday ends when you've completed the work you needed to get done, no sooner or no later. If you reach your limit or get restless, take a break and go out for a walk. Nobody's keeping track of you. And second, here's choose 3 things a day. And no longer on a strict time clock, you'll need some other structure to let you know that you've accomplished the day's work. And here's the author's suggestion. I like to pick my top 3 priorities and to share these commitments with a colleague or colleagues early in the day via chat or email. And it's very important that you share these because you have to be responsible to someone. Heck, they don't have to be colleagues from work, perhaps maybe even your spouse, close friends who agree to help you focus on getting work done. And this will give you a sense of accountability. And at the end of each day, share your accomplishments and shortcomings with these colleagues or friends via email. And for targeted projects not completed, be certain at the end of the day that you can explain why they weren't completed along with a revised completion target. And here's a third suggestion. Choose a new time management system. Since you no longer are on your office's 8-hour time clock, you will need a different method for managing your time. Your 3 things to accomplish can be part of the system, but you may need other structures as a possibility. How about planning out in advance which part of each day and week you're going to dedicate to certain types of tasks and activities? As an example, schedule all marketing calls each morning from 9:30 to 11. Prepare weekly action plans on a Monday afternoon from 1:30 to 3 p.m. And along with targets, you will need to track your actual activity to see how well you stayed on target and how your activity schedule may need to be adjusted. And here's number 4, respect and work with your natural energy cycles. Boy, that's an important one for me, I found. When you're at home, you have more flexibility to work with these natural cycles, so long as you don't let them rattle you. I always tend to fall asleep right after lunch. If you're a morning person, work on your 3 to accomplish priorities early in the day, and don't feel guilty about resting, even taking a nap or going on a walk shortly after lunch. That's always a drowsy, non-productive time of day for me. And the PM siesta, so common in Latin American countries, is not such a bad idea, in my opinion. Never freak out if you hit a solo work slump, a period when you can't seem to focus or can't get things done, especially the natural letdown when you've completed a major project and are trying to start a new one. You can use these natural ebbs to take care of personal tasks like, even cooking. I don't do that very well. Or making catch-up social calls, or say, how about reorganizing your files, something that doesn't take a lot of effort and creative thinking. You may find that mindless, low-priority projects not requiring deep thinking or initiative will be just the respite you need to get back in the groove for your next hot project. And here's number 5, be a regular. And because of required social isolation that the governments have forced on us, and we force on ourselves, obviously, we no longer can be a regular at Starbucks or our favorite dining out restaurant, but we can still be a regular in a few different online contexts. Facebook groups, Twitter lists, online discussion groups, either related to your profession or to your favorite hobby or avocation. We all need social interaction, even if it's only online. So now may be an ideal time to just hang out a little. You may wish to commit to just for fun channels of communication at least once or twice a day. And believe it or not, seeing online, seeing the same people in the same context, perhaps totally unrelated to your work, can provide a vital sense of continuity and community. Discover what's happening, good or bad, in other folks' lives, offer suggestions where you can, and ask for advice to solve your own challenges. It, believe me, it picks up your spirit so much if you can offer something that you know is helpful to another. That's a great way to feel good about yourself. And yes, hanging out online can be distracting, but connecting with and hearing from clients, colleagues, and just folks with similar interests to yours should help you feel like you're part of a larger workplace, profession at large, or your community or sub-community with a similar interest. Folks maybe that like model trains, if that's your thing. Well, I've given you 5 suggestions for effectively working from home. We don't have time now, but I'll be back next week with 5 more, including the particularly tricky issue of getting work done at home while at the same time your kids are home from school and need supervision and you need isolation. Please don't neglect to check out my website, middleagerenewal.com, and my 2 books, A Midlife Challenge, Wake Up, and Wake Up, Captain and Crew, Restart Your Engines. They're relevant now, as always, even in this time of coronavirus. And bye for now. We'll speak to you again next week on Middle Age Can Be Your Best Age.
You've been listening to Middle Age Can Be Your Best Age, hosted by Roy Richards, an expert on midlife renewal and author of both A Midlife Challenge, Wake Up, and Wake Up, Captain and Crew, Restart Your Engines. You can learn more about Roy and his Middle Age Renewal Training System by visiting his website, middleagerenewal.com.